It began, as most HOA disputes do, with something small, something so insignificant that most people would have ignored it. For years, the homeowner had lived peacefully in his quiet suburban neighborhood. The lawns were manicured, the driveways clean, and the homes lined up like mirror images of each other. His mailbox was nothing special, just a simple black post with a metal box attached, weathered by time but still sturdy and perfectly functional. One afternoon, a letter appeared in his mailbox. At first glance, it looked like any ordinary neighborhood update. But when he opened it, he found a notice from the HOA claiming that his mailbox was too ugly and out of compliance with the community standards. According to them, it detracted from the appearance of the neighborhood. The letter gave him 10 days to replace it or face daily fines. He was baffled. Ugly? Out of compliance? Nowhere in the HOA handbook did it specify how a mailbox should look. There were no guidelines on color, material, or style. He had seen plenty of mailboxes on his street, some leaning slightly, some chipped, some faded by the sun. His was no worse than the rest. Still, the HOA had chosen him as their target. Frustration simmered. He paid his dues on time, kept his yard tidy, and never caused trouble. Yet here he was, being accused of lowering the visual appeal of the neighborhood. He could have simply painted the mailbox or replaced it with a brand new, store-bought one. That would have been the easy solution. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized this wasn't about the mailbox at all. It was about control. The HOA wanted to flex its power, and he was determined not to bend so easily. Instead of rushing to fix it, he began to plan. He researched mailbox designs, scrolling through photos of standard models, then moving on to more creative ones. The longer he looked, the more an idea formed in his mind. If the HOA thought his plain, boring mailbox was ugly, then he would give him something truly unforgettable. He wouldn't just replace it, he would go extreme. Days passed, and he began sketching designs. He thought about statues, about oversized structures, about shapes that would stand out from blocks away. He wanted something so outrageous that no one in the neighborhood could ignore it. Something that would expose just how ridiculous the HOA's demand really was. By the end of the week, his plan was set. He gathered the materials, knowing that once he built it, the HOA's carefully controlled world would be shaken to its core. They had asked for change, and he was going to deliver it, just not in the way they expected. The countdown to the 10-day deadline ticked closer, and while the HOA waited smugly for compliance, he prepared to unveil something that would make their complaint look laughably small. And when the new mailbox finally appeared, it was nothing short of legendary. The morning of the deadline arrived, and the neighborhood woke to a spectacle that no one could have anticipated. Where once there had been a modest black mailbox, now stood a towering structure nearly 6 feet tall, crafted with painstaking detail and absurd creativity. It wasn't just a mailbox anymore, it was a statement. He had built it to resemble a medieval castle turret, complete with faux stone siding, miniature battlements, and even a tiny flag fluttering at the top. The mailbox itself was integrated into the castle gate, complete with a small drawbridge door that flipped down to reveal the mail slot. It was ridiculous, over the top, and absolutely impossible to miss. Neighbors slowed their cars to stare. Joggers stopped mid-stride, laughing in disbelief. Children pointed with wide eyes, delighted by the absurdity. And yet, despite its outrageous appearance, it was perfectly functional. The mail carrier, initially stunned, shrugged and placed letters inside without issue. The mailbox did its job, just in a way no one had ever expected. The HOA board members, however, were not amused. By noon that same day, another letter appeared in his new castle mailbox. This one was less polite. It declared that the new structure was unapproved, distracting, and in violation of community standards. It demanded immediate removal of fines of up to $100 per day. But there was a problem for the HOA. Their rulebook had no actual guidelines for mailboxes beyond the vague phrase, "must be well maintained." There was no mention of size, design, or theme. The homeowner had read the rules carefully before starting his project, and he had followed them to the letter. The structure was sturdy, freshly painted, and free of damage. By all technical definitions, it was well maintained. Word of the feud spread quickly through the neighborhood. Some residents thought the castle mailbox was hilarious, a harmless act of defiance that injected some fun into their otherwise cookie-cutter community. Others sided with the HOA, grumbling that it was tacky and embarrassing. The division among neighbors only fueled the drama. The HOA board, feeling their authority threatened, called an emergency meeting. Rumors circulated that they planned to rewrite the rules to ban unapproved mailbox structures. But rewriting rules took time and required a majority vote from the community. Until then, the castle mailbox remained untouchable. Each day, more people drove by just to see it. Photos began circulating online, and soon, the mailbox had a reputation far beyond the neighborhood. Friends of friends shared it on social media, and the absurd castle mailbox quickly went viral. The HOA had wanted conformity, but instead, they had unintentionally made one man's front yard into a local landmark. And the more attention it received, the angrier the board became. But the homeowner wasn't done yet. He knew the HOA would strike back harder. So he began preparing for the next round, ready to push his creativity even further if they tried to force his hand. The castle mailbox was only the beginning. The battle between the homeowner and the HOA had escalated into something far bigger than anyone could have predicted. What started as a simple complaint about an ugly mailbox had turned into a neighborhood-wide spectacle. And now, the HOA was desperate to regain control. Within days of the castle mailbox going viral, the board drafted a proposed amendment to the neighborhood covenants. The new language was strict. All mailboxes must be of standard design, black or white, and pre-approved by the HOA. Anything else would be considered a violation subject to steep fines. But rewriting the rules required a community vote. And to the board's frustration, the residents were divided. Many homeowners, even those who didn't particularly like the castle mailbox, resented the idea of giving the HOA even more power over their property. They had seen how quickly the board could nitpick something trivial and feared that today it was mailboxes, but tomorrow it could be patio furniture, flower beds, or even Christmas decorations. At the meeting, tensions ran high. The homeowner didn't need to say a word. His mailbox spoke louder than any argument. Neighbors who had never questioned the HOA before suddenly found themselves wondering why they were paying fees to a group that seemed obsessed with control. Stories surfaced of past petty enforcement, letters about grass being an inch too tall, threats over trash cans left out a few minutes late, warnings about unapproved garden gnomes. The mailbox had become a symbol, and the board's heavy-handed response only strengthened that symbolism. When the vote was finally held, the result shocked the HOA leadership. The amendment failed to pass. The majority of homeowners decided against the stricter rules, unwilling to give the board even more authority. The castle mailbox would remain untouched and perfectly legal under the existing guidelines. Defeated but unwilling to admit it, the HOA quietly stopped sending notices. They realized that pursuing the matter further would only make them look weaker. The mailbox, once their greatest irritation, now stood as a permanent reminder of their overreach. Over time, the neighborhood adjusted. The castle mailbox became part of the landscape, a quirky feature that made the community memorable. Visitors still stopped to take photos, and the homeowner, amused by the whole ordeal, occasionally added seasonal decorations to keep things interesting. At Christmas, it was wrapped in garland. On Halloween, it sported a plastic skeleton climbing the turret. Each new touch drew laughter from neighbors and silently mocked the HOA's failed attempt at control. In the end, the homeowner had proven a simple point. Sometimes the best way to fight absurdity is with something even more absurd. The HOA had wanted to conform, but instead, they had been forced to back down and rethink their approach. And so the castle mailbox remained, not just a place to receive letters, but a monument to creativity, defiance, and the power of standing up when the rules stopped making sense. The HOA had tried to call his mailbox too ugly. Now it was the most famous mailbox in the entire county. Do like, subscribe for more video.